Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to my van down by the river. It's a national emergency! Run for your life! Ah, it's a national emergency! It's an emergency. Hurry, quick, get out of my way. It's an emergency. So Trump has declared a national emergency. And you would think that it's the end of the world. If you listen to the left-wing commentators on the mainstream fake news media, you'd think that this is the end of the world. That Trump has violated the Constitution, and that he has stepped over his authority and has created some new thing to get around the Congress. Okay, so presidents have been using national emergencies and executive orders to get around the Congress for a good long time now. And the only time that they use these national emergencies is when Congress cannot come to a conclusion that is satisfactory to the president, and he feels like that the situation requires his attention. And so he'll do something like this until, and basically force Congress to come around, and if they don't like it, they can lump it. And this is why we have a president, so that he can make a decision, and instead of relying on a committee to come to an agreement, that it's much harder to get a group of people to agree on something than it is for one person to make up their mind about something. And that sometimes when a situation is dire enough, we do not have time to wait around while the wheels of this democracy type government work itself out. It's why we're a republic and not a democracy. It's why we have a president instead of a parliament, because our president makes these kind of hard decisions, and he always has. It's just in times past we were united enough as Americans to where typically the Senate and the House just kind of went, all right, so the president knows best. When declaring a national emergency, a president is essentially saying, I have information and knowledge that either I can't express to you or you wouldn't understand if I did. And I don't have the time to hash it out with you while America goes down the tubes. Now, here's the thing. There is no violation of the Constitution in the act of building the wall. Congress could fund and decide to build a wall, and it would be no problem. There's no violation. So I want to make that clear, that the act of building the wall is not a violation. What they're saying is it's a violation of the Constitution to go around Nancy Pelosi and her obstructionism. Okay? Now, speaking of Nancy Pelosi, she just said something very infuriating. She said something very inflammatory. She said something that I think will go down in history when all this plays out in 10 or 15 years down the road. Because she said, if Donald Trump uses a national emergency to build the wall, then the next Democratic president that they get in office might decide to declare a national emergency to confiscate firearms from the American people. Okay, so the act of confiscating firearms from the American people is a violation of the Constitution. That the Congress does not have the ability to sign a bill to confiscate guns because they're bound by the Constitution and the Second Amendment, which prohibits them from confiscating guns from American citizens. Okay? So this is apples and oranges. Because you declare a national emergency to build a wall, something that Congress would be allowed to do if they saw fit to, is very different than using a national emergency to subvert the constitutional rights of millions of Americans. And, you know, I would make statements about how that would trigger a civil war, but come on, everybody knows that. That if you come for the guns, that's the trigger for millions of Americans to take up arms and overthrow an unconstitutional order. That there will be, at the very least, a resistance, and I mean an armed one. That there will be armed conflict if anyone ever tries to confiscate firearms from American citizens who have done nothing wrong. So, if they're not a criminal, then they have a right to possess it. You can't have it, feds. You just can't. It's in the Constitution, and you can't. And you can't make an executive national order that says you can. That's a violation of the Constitution. Trump is declaring a national emergency to do something which is constitutionally and legally okay. Now, where it gets in violation of the Constitution, according to the left and to the Dems, is that, and to some Republicans are saying this too, is that this kind of national emergency would strip the Speaker of the House and the House of Representatives from their traditional control of the purse strings of the country. However, in times of war and in times of national emergency, the president has always been able to just go wherever he needs to find the extra funds to make it happen, because we don't have time for Congress to come around on the subject. Now, this one is a little different because Congress doesn't intend to come around on the subject. They're not making their decisions about the border based in ignorance. They're making their decisions on the border based in the fact that they have sold out America to the idea of open borders, that they don't want any border. They're lying to you when they say they want a border. They don't want a border. They're trying to move towards the end of nationalism and the beginning of the New World Order, the beginning of one world government. Open borders is the first step. That way they can flood all these anti-American, non-American people in, make them citizens, give them a vote, and then destroy the Constitution. Because that's the only way you can rewrite the Constitution, is you have to have the people, the majority, not just the simple majority, the two-thirds, the vast majority, a two-thirds majority of the people across the board have to be together and decide. It can't be 51-49, you know. It's got to be a two-thirds majority to change the Constitution. It can be changed, but that's the only way you'll change it. Nancy Pelosi, if one of your Democratic presidents in the future decides to declare a national emergency over firearms and confiscate them, you will be the person who history will define as the individual who ended the American empire as we know it, the United States of America as we know it. The thing that will evolve out of the conflict following that move will be something other than America. Either your side wins and a globalist, oppressive, totalitarian government takes shape, or the other side wins and either America gets rebuilt and America is made great again, or America falls into some kind of right-wing, over-the-top, overreaction to it until it's a place where I wouldn't want to live. So, declaring a national emergency to build a wall is nothing compared with gun confiscation, you stupid twit! Who elected you to be the Speaker of the House of the United States of America? You're clearly a totalitarian moron! If you think we'll lay down for gun confiscation ever, you're an idiot! I don't care who you say you are! Americans will never lay down for that because we understand there's only one reason you want to take our guns away. It's so that you can control and dominate us. It's so that you can put your foot on our neck. It's so that you can hold us down. Honestly, if someone wants to disarm you, it's just so they can rape you. That's it. There's only one reason. They want to violate you. If they wanted to kill you, they'd just fight you. But they don't want to fight you because they don't want to kill you. They want to control you. The only reason anyone ever wants to take away your firearms is so they can control you. This is the Jezebel spirit of control. It's the Jezebel spirit of control that makes Nancy Pelosi want to stop Donald Trump just because she don't like him. When in the past, she's advocated for border security. In the past, she's allocated money to the border wall. She's gone on record, her and Schumer both have gone on record in support of the wall in the past. Just not when it's Donald Trump's re-election campaign they're talking about. And that's the bottom line here. So what's next? Clearly, it's not time to bug out. This is not a national emergency that affects most of us. But a lot of people on the border consider this a national emergency. And those angel moms and dads, those people whose children were murdered by illegal immigrants that had they not been allowed in the country, their children would still be alive today. That when you want to put the wall up, you're talking about saving lives. If you don't want there to be a wall up, you're talking about the continuation of the status quo. Why does the left think there's no emergency? Because for the last 40 years, we just sat on this emergency and let it happen. Because they don't think it's an emergency because it's what they want. This emergency, the left engineered. They want this flow of illegal immigration. They don't want us to be able to pick and choose who comes in this country. You know why? Because it's part of a larger anti-national globalist ideology. You've heard Antifa quoting it. No border, no wall, no USA at all. Nancy Pelosi, that's what you want. No border, no wall, no USA at all. That's why you want to come and confiscate our guns. You want to destroy this country. If you try to take our guns, you will destroy this country. It'll be a giant smoking hole in the ground. It'll be much worse than the last one, than the last Civil War. You understand that this is the old gray sage wisdom here. That I've known people that won't even talk to you. Nancy, there are people out there that are so different from you, they won't even speak to you. You'll never get a chance to hear their opinion because they don't want to talk to you because they're disgusted by you. And I know these people and talk to them. And they won't stand for this. They believe in the Constitution. And if you go to subvert it, they'll come for you. I'm not saying that. I'm not advocating it. I'm just acknowledging that there are people out there like that. They will be triggered in a real way by this. And I do mean triggered. You want to trigger a civil war? Come after the guns. This is an emergency, though. It's an emergency in the fact that we have 40 years of inaction. This emergency has been going on so long, people are numb to it. This is why they don't think there's an emergency. That's the new narrative already springing up this morning, is that Donald Trump has engineered this emergency. They say nothing has changed in the last 40 years. You're right. The emergency occurred 40 years ago when they started flooding into our country illegally. That Reagan tried to deal with it by giving them millions of them amnesty, which bolstered the Democratic Party in a way that it really plucked them from the ashes. You know, that they were a done party until amnesty gave all of these illegal aliens the right to vote in America. And so amnesty wasn't enough. That was the deal. Reagan made a deal in the 80s. We'll give everyone here that's amnesty as long as we understand that anybody else coming in is a criminal and should be prosecuted for illegal entry into our country against the law. That illegal immigration is a crime. Crossing into a foreign country without a passport, without an invitation, without due process is a crime in every nation, unless there's agreement between the nations. So, you know, this is going to be their narrative, that Donald Trump has made this up. There's not a real emergency, and they're going to use numbers to try to prove it. Because we've been under this emergency for 40 years. This emergency is 40 years old. I remember what it was like before illegal immigration. I remember what it was like. And I can tell you, illegal immigration is one of the key things that has destroyed our country. Because it's, you know, the porous border especially, all of these drugs have come in from the South. Heroin, cocaine, you know, crack cocaine and heroin, and now this new one, fentanyl. I mean, this stuff is killing people. It's poison. Our enemies love it, that they can just pour it into the bottom end of our country, and we just soak it up. Nobody's really even trying to stop it. Now, the border needs to be protected. It needs to be protected with a barrier. And everyone knows this, and all of this contention and resistance is part of the Resist Donald Trump movement. They're going to resist everything. I heard one commentator say that, you know, he could win the biggest contracts in the world for America and turn the economy around and make America the greatest it's ever been, greater than ever before. And they would still resist him because it's Donald Trump that did it. See, they hate him because he wasn't supposed to be elected. It was Hillary's turn. Didn't he know that? God save our republic.